Ladies and gentlemen, fellow veterans, welcome to another Veterans Network podcast. I am your host and co-founder of Veterans Network, Jamie Kennedy. In this episode, I've been very fortunate to speak with the Wise Owl, as I like to call him, but he is also known as the Untamed Entrepreneur, Jim Hughes. We will be discussing what veterans have in common with entrepreneurs, and Jim gives his advice for those making that decision to leave the armed forces to start their own businesses. So, without further ado, let me introduce you all to Jim Hughes, aka the Untamed Entrepreneur. Jim, so just tell us a little bit about what Untamed Entrepreneur really is.
Well, the Untamed Entrepreneur is me, kind of half tongue-in-cheek description of who I am. And I am somebody who basically helps military leavers and non-military leavers, but mostly military leavers, transition from their current job, which is obviously, in this case, the military focus, into a life of entrepreneurship, basically. So I help people who want to leave or have just left and say, right, I want to start a business. But what the hell does that business look like? How can I design it around what I'm good at? What am I good at? What are my passions? What are my purpose? And then how can I actually get that up and running? So that's me. That's what I do. And I do that as I travel the world. My missus and I, Kim, we live an untamed, in inverted commas, life as digital nomads. So we run our businesses from a laptop, from wherever we are. We started that in March, and since March we've been to 9 countries, about 110,000 kilometers, so what, 60-odd thousand miles traveled, a shitload of places been to, and people seen and stuff. So yeah, it's basically living the life I try and help others live as well.
So you're quite literally living the dream.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I mean, for lots of people, I'm not delusional, and I don't think that there's everyone out there wants to live this kind of lifestyle. For some people, it scares the shit out of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of people out there who want to live kind of by the seat of their pants and want to travel and see the world and make money as they go. And yeah, ultimately, I'm doing that, but I'm also trying to encourage other people to do the same thing. And there is a lot of limiting beliefs that people tell themselves. There's a lot of obstacles people throw up in front of themselves as reasons why they can't actually do it. But when you break those down, it's not as hard as people think. And the more people who do it and have a great time doing so, the better in my eyes.
Yeah, so like considering you've never actually served in the armed forces, you do have a really good connection and network of veterans, and you've given your fair share of mentoring to those who have left the armed forces. And how has that come to be? How have you sort of embedded yourself in a network of service leavers, veterans?
That's a good question, actually, and I started to look into the idea of niching, aiming my services towards the military guys and girls in about earlier on this year, probably around April time. And one of the questions I was asking myself and those who I knew in the military was, what do you need to have served in the armed forces to kind of garner respect amongst the military personnel? Will they only ever turn to someone for advice who's served themselves and who knows exactly what they've been through? And the overriding answer was no. As long as you can tell an honest story and add value to them, then they're more than happy to basically seek your counsel, pay for your services type thing. So the connection came initially from my brother, who's a major in the Royal Marines, and he's a major, so obviously he's been in a fair while. And through him, I've met countless of his mates, and I've been on the piss with them ever since I was a kid. I lived with a couple of guys one of whom is now major in the Marines, another one got his Green Beret, but he also was in who did he serve with, the Cavaliers or the Royal Dragoons or something like that. So I knew through those guys, and then also nowadays I've got loads of other friends and contacts in the US forces, and I've always had an affinity towards people who serve in the military. I kind of share a lot of the values that they do, which is, the whole, if you're going to do a job, do it properly. whether that's the job you're getting paid for, whether that's a sporting endeavour, running or playing football or whatever, or whether it's going out on the lash. If you're going to do a job, do it properly and basically do it to 100%, which I've always found brilliant, and I've had a lot of time for that. And the often peddled but true values of loyalty and discipline and hard work and everything else are things I really admire, and I think there's a lot of that lacking in Civvy Street. So the military people are somebody I love to add value to, and I can also resonate with, despite having never served. I never claimed to have served, but I feel like I can kind of resonate with them,
because
helping them is something I really enjoy doing.
It's like surrounding yourself with like-minded people, right? So I guess you've seen something in veterans that is very like-minded to the entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah, I did an interview with he's a current reservist, but he used to be, I think he was a captain. I'm not sure what regiment, but he met my brother in Afghanistan. I've become friends with him since. I've got an interview on my site with him up in Edinburgh, and we had that similar discussion around, what are the similarities between military careers and entrepreneurship. And there's a couple out there. It's all about making the most of what you've got, using your resources and the people effectively, effective leadership, and holding yourself accountable. When you're in the military, if you're not pulling your weight, you're going to get found out fairly quickly. In the corporate world, if you're in a big company, you can float along, adding very little value without being found out. But that does not happen in the military, and it doesn't happen in the business world either. It's very much dog eat dog. What I do think about the military is, whilst there are loads of similarities, there is also some obstacles that people in the military face when they are looking to set up their own businesses, and that's one of the things I try and help overcome. Which I can go into more detail if you like, unless you have.
Yeah, I mean, because of course one of the ways that Veterans Network likes to support veterans is to support veteran-owned businesses, because we've noticed that there are a lot of veterans who are leaving the armed forces without aspiration to start their own business. I don't know why. I think it's because veterans like to work for themselves, I suppose, and it's like a challenge.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, isn't it? It's a case of is it a case of enjoying being autonomous, even though you never really are in the armed forces, but you're certainly expected to think for yourself. You're also expected to land in any kind of environment and not only survive but thrive. And then there's that teamwork, leadership aspect, which I think is probably a large reason. I think there's a study, and I'm going to butcher the figures. I should have had them ready for this chat. But there's a university in America called Syracuse. I'm not even sure where it is. And they did a study, and it was something ridiculous, like over 50% or 45% of officers who served in the US Army in the Second World War went on to run their own businesses.
That's amazing. And that's sort of reoccurring now, because obviously following the Iraq War and the conflict in Afghanistan, soldiers now, we're not officially deployed anywhere. So people are leaving the armed forces, and a cycle, you can see it's happening again. There's so many people leaving the forces now, starting their own businesses. Personally, from my personal point of view as a veteran, that's because I just never found that same satisfaction, I suppose, that job satisfaction. When missing gaps, I think there's gaps when you leave the armed forces, and it's just trying to fulfill that sense of purpose. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, for myself, speaking for myself, that's why I like to start up my own business, and I like running Veterans Network, because it just gives me a sense of direction, sense of purpose. I'm not stuck in that. It's okay to be in that 9-to-5 job if you want to be, but for me, that doesn't sit well, and I guess that's why so many other veterans probably feel the same.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I wrote an article about this a little while ago, about 6 months ago, I think, and it was about why I focus so much on military leavers and how they are similar to people like entrepreneurs, people like me who are kind of entrepreneurs and also, maybe live around the world or have a fair bit of adventure in their lifestyle. And I think it's a lot of it is about sort of being close to the edge of failure and success all the time, and having that level of excitement. So the military guys I know, and I'm sure you can vouch for this, that their kind of threshold of boredom is much higher than everyone else's. So they need to have that level of, whether it's adrenaline or kind of action and adventure in their life, and risk and excitement to prevent the boredom. And as soon as it dips below a certain level, they're like, well, bored, I want to move on. And that's the same in business, and people who I suppose want to live around the world. Is kind of right. You never know what's around the next corner, and that holds people's kind of imagination. It keeps them excited, and perhaps maybe with the conflicts finishing, there's a huge portion of that missing now from a career in the armed forces. I mean, a load of people, because those conflicts were on for so long, not whole generation, but a whole load of people would have signed up with those conflicts in the forefront of their mind, and now they're not there. That's a big chunk missing. So that may be coming into it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm even seeing people now, right, who are still serving. There's actually soldiers who are currently serving and starting their own businesses up, as well as being in the armed forces. Now, I've never seen that done before, and that's because there was such conflicts like Iraq and Afghanistan. But like you say, now that there's nothing really at the forefront of your focus, I guess people now have time to think of other options and think of other things to keep their mind busy. I mean, yes, they are still doing their training, they're going on exercises and whatnot, and going on the ranges, but at the end of the day, there are no deployments that are, or at least to our knowledge, there's no deployments that are at the forefront. So what else do they have to sort of give them that drive? And I guess
exactly.
I guess career people that are wanting to aspire and having a good career in the armed forces, that is their motive, that is their drive. But for some guys, I guess there's people that are just looking for a war fix, maybe. I can't speak for all.
I never really thought of it like that. That's a good way of putting it. There's that threshold of boredom we were talking about, and they just need something else to kind of fill those holes. Whereas obviously going overseas into combat areas was filling that bucket for them. But I mean, one of my clients, him and his business partner are both serving, and they're both running a very successful business, and it's going really well. But he's the kind of person, and his business partner might be the kind of person that if they're obviously if they're engaged and overseas, then that wouldn't be the case. But now they're not. There's that hole there that needs to be filled. But I say it's two parts, and then looking at it from the military side is one part, but the other part is the fact that now entrepreneurship is the barriers to entry are so much lower than ever before. So back when it was the Falklands, or even as early on as when the Iraq War started, setting up your own business was expensive. Only a few people did it. You needed either a bit of money or technical know-how, or people who knew technical stuff. And marketing was more expensive, research was more expensive, outsourcing, finding talent was more expensive and more difficult. Whereas now there's apps and platforms and resources and everything to make it so much easier. I mean, you can be up and running with a Facebook page within 5 minutes at no cost, and then a couple of quid of an advert, and you can see exactly who you're targeting. You can see their results. You can see all of that stuff. So you've got the military side of things, which is okay. Now these conflicts are dying off, and there's a bit more time on people's hands, and people are looking to kind of provide that level of excitement and risk. But also, entrepreneurship now offers a much easier route than ever before, and you can design a business around what you love doing, and you can make money from your passions, which is more easier now than ever before, which I think is probably a fairly important piece of that.
Absolutely. I mean, this conversation now it's channeling me towards asking the ultimate question of basically your ballpark and what you do best. Now, let's say, for instance, I was still serving the armed forces, and I've just made that decision to sign off because I want to get out. So I have a year now where I want to leave the armed forces, and I have an ambition to start a business, but I don't really know what business. I know I want to work for myself. I know I want to live live the life of living the dream like you do. but I just don't know how to really get there. So what would be your initial advice to someone in that position?
Well, firstly, I'd say you're doing it right by giving yourself that time frame to put the thought in. A lot of people, I'm sure you've met, they put their notice in and then they say, no, I'll be fine, I'll sort it. Then they leave, and then all of a sudden they're sitting there at home bored, and they're going, oh shit, actually I don't have that much money, I've got that much time to put into this, I need to go and get some money immediately, and that immediately puts pressures on that you didn't need. So starting early, so even if you're just thinking about leaving the military soon, the earlier you can start, the better. But given a year, that's a solid amount of time to start putting your thoughts together. But for people who I mentor who are at that stage, the first thing I go through, and this is the same for military people, for non-military people, is we work on the self-awareness, because going deeper into what I touched on before, the military is brilliant for so many things, but what it does is it teaches people to be rounded. It teaches people to work on their weaknesses. So if you're an A here, you're an A here, you're an A here, you're awesome. Right, what are you a D at? Right, you're shit at that. Let's work on. Let's say it's your nav. If your navigation's shit, right, we need to work on that. So people come out fairly well-rounded and skilled in all of these different areas. But what that does is it clouds your judgment as to what you're truly passionate about, and what really sort of gets your juices flowing, versus what you can just do competently. Which is a challenge. And what I always advocate in business is that you strengthen what you're really good at, and you leverage those strengths, and you outsource your weaknesses. Because by outsourcing your weaknesses, basically you're going to be paying somebody else who loves doing that. They're better than you at it. And if you do it yourself, it's like it's a generation thing as well. You look back at people, the baby boomers, your parents' age, whether in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, they used to learn how to tile just so they could do their own bathroom to avoid paying someone to do it, and it would take them months. They wouldn't like doing it. It would be massively time consuming and tiring. The job would be shit, and it would end up costing them more than they would have just paid had they got someone else to do it. So I'm kind of going a bit off tangent, but for me it's all about learning what you're really passionate about, what your strengths are, what your skills are, and where that might fit into a business, and therefore where you should focus your energy. So the first step is always a self-awareness, which I think it ties into leadership as well. I think the number one aspect of leadership is self-awareness. So we go through that, and I've got a profile tool I use, which is designed for entrepreneurs, which is called the Talent Dynamics Test, and I include that in my first call, and that's really, it gives you like a 30-page report. Okay, you love the big picture. You don't like detail, you love variety, so you need constant change, and you don't like doing long projects and finishing them till the end. You're brilliant at starting things, you're brilliant with people, but you're not very patient, those kind of things. So that would mean, you're great at creating businesses, but not brilliant at managing them. So what do you need to do, blah, blah, blah. So that's, for me, is a really great start. And then I go into what's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your why? To quote Simon Sinek. Working out what you're here for, basically, what really motivates you, who do you want to help, and how. And once you get really clear about that, and you ally that to what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, you can get a really clear picture. Okay, well, that immediately rules out a shitload of potential businesses that I could have started and not enjoyed. So okay, we're going to work with this many. We've got this many options now we can play with, and then we start going deeper then. Into who. So who is it that you want to serve? Who should your target market be? This is all before even designing or thinking about what kind of business to run. This is okay. Who you're going to add value to? If you like, who do you respect? Who do you align with the most, and who respects you and kind of understands you? And if you can get really clear on that, then that will inspire you to create a business and keep adding value with that business, because you're enjoying who you're adding value to, if that makes sense. You like who you're helping, and you want to help them even more, which is something that's often overlooked. A lot of people have great business ideas, and they sell a product which they may be passionate about, but the wrong kind of people are buying it, and they're like, well, okay, I'm a 35-year-old bloke, but I'm adding value to 65-year-old women, which is fine, but I don't really understand them and their thought patterns, and they don't really get me. So I don't really get much fulfillment from really adding value to them. But if I'm adding value to 25-year-old blokes who are in my position that I used to be in, and I can understand exactly the pain points they're going through, the challenges they want to overcome, then you've got a lot more fulfillment from doing that. So that's a really important part. And then we start getting into the actual nuts and bolts of what the business might look like. So what kind of business is it? How should it be structured? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it going to be, what role are you going to play in that? Are you going to be the creator? Are you going to be the manager of it? Who are you going to hire? And then how is the final step? And that's how we're going to market this. How will it be structured? And all that kind of good stuff. So it's a journey starting with self-awareness, dealing with all of the personal stuff as well as the business stuff, and all the really important mindset tools that I go through are all kind of inbuilt into all of those steps, because the mindset aspect is really important. So learning how to deal with failures, learning how to set goals, learning how to plan and create a proper vision for what you want are all crucial, because if you have a great business idea but no strong foundations or the mental toolkit to be able to deal with failures, then you're going to be up shit creek really quickly.
I mean, there's the thing with the failing is that there are going to be fails, but it doesn't mean that those fails are dead ends, does it? Because for me, I feel that it's not really fail, it's merely learning and then just sort of reassessing why it went wrong there, and then adapting it, and then continuing on the path. Like it sort of shapes your business. The failing shapes what the business becomes. That's what I've learned from my experience. So
absolutely. I mean, I had a business concept before this one that I went as far as creating a website for, writing copy for, marketing it, paying for a web developer, paying for a logo, and then starting to put the feelers out. And then I realized that it wasn't for me. It was too soon. But not for 1 second did I treat that as a waste of time, which lots of other people could have, because it ended up costing me, $500-$600 and a whole load of time. But it's something you've got to learn from and say, right, what worked about that and what didn't? Because if you know what worked, you can try and replicate that again, and if you know what didn't work, you can avoid those same mistakes. There's a bit of a cliched line, but you don't win or lose, you win or learn.
Win or learn, yeah.
And Mark Zuckerberg talks about it all the time when Facebook was starting. They fail fast, I think, and fail often. Try something, learn really quickly whether it works or not, and just can it. Don't try and push it for the sake of it. And if it does fail, don't be perturbed by it. Just learn from it.
I mean, and if you can learn from others. So if your business idea is in an area that's been done before by many others, that's not always a bad thing that it's been done before, because someone's done all the hard work for you already. They've done all that learning. They've made those mistakes. So really, you can just pick up a book or look into those existing businesses and learn from them, which is going to only increase the speed in which you get that business up and running, and you can potentially avoid making those mistakes because you've learnt from someone else. It's like standing on the shoulders of giants, right? It's exactly that.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, having somebody out there who's already doing it or has already done it is actually a good thing. You don't want to be the only person operating in an industry, because you need to have somebody out there to prove that the concept actually is viable. So if you've got nobody doing it in today's world, it's probably a reason. There's a reason for that, and it usually is because there is no money or it doesn't really work. So having a small number of people doing it and proving the concept is a great starting point, because obviously they're already doing it and succeeding. And even if they've failed, if you know why they failed, you can learn from that. And yeah, nowadays the resources and tools out there that you can learn from are absolutely endless. I'm a massive fan of personal development and education, and I've learned more from my own education into entrepreneurship and business and personal development, self-development and the psychology of things in the last couple of years than I did in my university degree, which I didn't really learn anything other than the things that people usually learn at uni, which is boozing and trying to get out on the lash as often as possible and learning how to attend lectures with the biggest hangover. But there's so many resources out there now. Whether it's, I'm a big fan of audio books. I think I've probably told you in the past. There's Audible.com is an app I use all the time. And yeah, I don't know what you pay. I've got an Australian account from when I used to live there, but I think in England it might only be like £8 or £10 a month, maybe even less. And you get a free book with that. And there's millions of books out there, and you can listen to them as you're going. As you're driving, you're making the most of the time that you would normally be spending just listening to music or sitting on Facebook. So smashing the audiobooks. I've listened to, I think, 60 audiobooks in the last couple of years. And if I was just reading the physical books, that would take me 10 years because I just read such a small amount. There's podcasts out there like this one on iTunes and all the other apps that are amazing to listen to again while you're in the car or on the train or on the bus or walking even. And then there's physical books still. There's webinars you can sign up to. There's Facebook groups you can follow. There's a mailing lists you can subscribe to. There's just so much shit out there. It is a problem in the sense that you can get information overload. So you've got to be careful with who you select, what the inputs are, because you could just get overwhelmed with these all conflicting messages. But you've got to go through that process, especially early on, as you're trying to find what it is that interests you.
But that's where people like yourself come in, right, with the Untamed Entrepreneur, because you can just zero in. They're getting that information, that zeroed in information directly from a mentor, a one-on-one, and you're giving them the information that's sort of crafted for them, and you've kind of filtered through the information for them as such, really. Yeah, absolutely. So I went through the journey of trying to figure out what I wanted to do, like I say, a couple of years ago, and I spent months and lots of hours and lots of money figuring that out. I went to seminars. I flew from Australia to Whistler to attend a seminar. I flew to Bali for a training thing. I read 20 odd books. I signed up to podcasts, online courses, just to get me to the point of saying, right, I've got this kind of stuff figured out now. So what I want to do is I want to help people go through that process, but go through a lot quicker, a lot more effectively, and also just using a lot less time in the process. So if you've got a really wide field of vision of what's possible out there, then yeah, like you say, I basically try and jump you down that path to save a lot of time and money. Trial and error is still really important, however. You've still got to try stuff. There's no magic bullet, and finding your one thing and your business concept overnight is unlikely. You've still got to try stuff, but trying stuff in a much narrower field. Yeah. Of aligned with what you're passionate about and what your strengths and skills are. So, before we wrap this up, I just want to ask a question which is probably quite pertinent to the people of Veterans Network. All of this can sound quite daunting to like a young private soldier who's done his 3 or 4 years and is very looking forward to leaving the armed forces, but the whole concept of setting up a business, he's got the idea, he knows what his business, what area his business is going to be in, but all this information sounds very daunting to him, and he just maybe hasn't got that courage to just go for it. So what would your one bit of advice be there? That is a good question. The number one thing I would suggest anyone do is start surrounding yourself with people who are already on that path or have already achieved what you think you want to achieve. So your environment is one of the most important aspects in your success. There's a phrase called you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, which is, when you think about it, conducting a quick analysis. Who do you spend your time with, and how similar are you to them? What you hear, your inputs, that leads to what you think and what you feel and what you believe, and that ultimately leads to how you act. So by being really careful about what those inputs are, whether that's just sitting around in the pub shooting the shit, or whether it's listening to podcasts or having one-on-one meetings with people, the quality of those inputs are massively important. So if you're surrounded by, and there's figures, again, I should have had them lined up, but you're going to ask the question, but there's figures around smoking and obesity and even divorce. And it's something like if you have a couple of close friends who are obese, you've got more than 50% chance of being obese yourself. If you've got 5 people who smoke cigarettes around you, the chances of you smoking are
70% higher. It's the same with divorce. It's absolutely massive. So with that in mind, if you want to get into entrepreneurship and you think you know what sort of area, start changing the inputs that you have. The most influential inputs are the people that you spend time with, the people who you interact with face to face or over the phone. So be careful about who you're spending your time with. Your friends, are they aligned with that vision? Do they want to get into that themselves, or are they just going to shoot you down when you suggest that idea? If you surround yourself with people who are like, yes, that's an awesome idea, I'm here to support you, let's come up with some ideas, that is unbelievably valuable. If you're surrounding yourself with people who have their own limiting beliefs and trying to impose them on you, then it's not going to go anywhere. So the little test is to say, look, is to ask a few people you're close with and say, or just say, look, I've got an idea. I want to become a business person, and I want to live my dream, traveling the world. See what their reaction is. If they laugh at you, it might be brutal, but if they laugh at you, they might not be the people you want to be spending your time with. If that vision is serious, if you really want to do it, you've got to be fairly brutal with that. And that's what I did early on. There's a few people I hung around with who were, they were actually like sucking the energy out of it. They were taking value away. They weren't not only were they not being neutral about it, they weren't helping, but they were actually taking value away, and it just wasn't working out. So I was like, I'm just going to spend a lot less time with you. So beyond that, it's a case of what books am I reading, what podcasts am I listening to, and what that does is it crafts all of those thoughts that go on in your head, and it starts making things a lot more realistic and a lot more achievable. And then you can say, actually, what was a bit of a pipe dream is now actually a lot more achievable. And there's people through your network who will be on the same path. So connect with them. Your forum will be brilliant for that. If there's people out there who want to get into it, firstly, I'm happy to give people a quick call here and there, or some messages on Facebook. I'm always happy to push people in that direction if they want it. But just send a message or write a post on your group on the Veterans Network and say, look, this is what I'm thinking of. And there'll be people out there that will offer their support, and that's crucial. So that's what I would suggest.
Because you can actually be found, although you wasn't serving, because you add so much value to the mentoring side of business startups and that, and so much value to our network. You're actually on our network, aren't you? So people can contact you via there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they can actually contact you via your website and via Facebook. Facebook Untamed Entrepreneur, and your website is
theuntamedentrepreneur.com.
Excellent.
More than happy to connect with people, and just overriding messages. If you're thinking about it, just start surrounding yourself, whether it's face to face or in your ears, through your headphones. Start surrounding yourself with people who are already on that path or have achieved it already, because that's going to be massively important.
Amazing. You really are a wise owl, Jim. A wise owl.
I like that nickname. I'm going to stick with that.
Yeah. Well, Jim Hughes, Untamed Entrepreneur, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, pal. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
There you have it. So much valuable advice to take on board there from the Untamed Entrepreneur. The key point I took away from that conversation is how valuable it is to surround yourself with like-minded people. People who really share the same motivation, the same drive and desire for success. And that really ties in with Veterans Network, a network of veterans who have shared similar experiences and are now on new ventures, having left the armed forces or in the process of leaving the forces. To that end, I'd like to take this opportunity to invite you all to veteransnetwork.co.uk. That's www.veteransnetwork.co.uk to utilise our forum to connect and network with fellow veterans. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. As always, we appreciate your time and support. Catch you all soon.